Okay, can everybody hear and see me? Can you guys punch in on the chat here? Let me know that you can hear and see me. Yes, okay, awesome. Yes, 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 good, good. Okay, awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to get this started here. All right, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. So I'm going to get this started here. So the seminar we're going to talk about today is Smashing Inflammation Forever. For those of you that were with me last week, we talked about amplifying your immune system. So this was a seminar that was all about promotion of health and not so much on the prevention, right? So we've been all taught the preventative measures as far as the current pandemic. So we talked about promotional things on how to boost your innate and your humoral immunity, right? So we talked about supporting your lymphatic system, your respiratory system, your nervous system, etc. So if you didn't get a chance to catch that one, it is on Facebook and it is also on YouTube. So make sure you guys check that out. Cool. Good to see you guys too. All right. Got a good group here. So let's get started. So a lot of you probably recognize the Hard to Kill here. This was a movie in 1990, Steven Seagal. I think I was barely in high school when I saw this. I thought it was the coolest of all time. If you go back and watch it now, I think it's a pretty terrible movie, but the Hard to Kill theme, you guys, the reason that I chose this is because no matter what authority you listen to, no matter what media channel, no matter where you're consuming stats from, there's one thing that is agreed upon by everybody, is that the commonality amongst all of those who are getting in big trouble with this current COVID-19 situation are the ones that have at least one chronic disease. Very elderly and immunocompromised people. So over 98% of people, you guys, that have died from COVID-19 did have at least one chronic disease. So, and what we know is the underlying cause of all chronic disease, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the talk, is that it comes from chronic inflammation. So for those of you that are joining for the first time that don't know me, so my name is Dr. Ryan Hewitt. I am a chiropractor and clinician operator at Innate Wellness Center that I co-own with my wife, Kendra. We have an office in North Andover, Mass, and Beverly, Mass. So you can check it out, in8wc.com. I've been practicing for 12 years, and my expertise is in wellness. So I'm a certified wellness practitioner. I specialize in optimal movement, wellness, and performance. So getting started with this, you guys, obviously the blue pill here versus the red pill. The blue pill is what we all know, right? The recommendations from the CDC as far as all the stuff to do, right? This is all the stuff that you could say the authorities and the authoritative government bodies are telling us to do. Wash your hands, social distance, shelter in place, etc. So, which we've abided by those. We've actually closed our offices for just over 2 weeks now, because it is a serious issue. However, what nobody is talking about is the actual truth, the red pill. So what we're going to talk about today is an even more serious problem than COVID-19. So this is the wake-up call for everybody. The real pandemic. So what is the real pandemic, you guys? Is it COVID-19? Is it because we're not vaccinated for this issue? Is it the politicians, the global economy, or the toilet paper shortage? So all of these things, you guys, these are all things that are out of your control. These are things that you have no influence on. So what you always want to come back to are the things that you have control over, the things that you have influence or control over, right? So things like your emotions, your judgments, your creativity, your attitude, your desires, your determination. Most importantly, though, your decisions, right? So your choices. I use this slide because one of my mentors, Dr. Dane Donahue, he posted this the other day, and I thought it was great. He posted that we have met the enemy and he is us. So this cartoon on the right, if you're over the age of 50, you may recognize this from 1970. This is a famous cartoon, Pogo the Possum. And the artist Walt Kelly This was designed for, I think it was like World Environment Day or Environmental Day. It was a World Environment Day. It was to create awareness of the environment and how we're trashing the environment. And this is a play on words from a famous quote from the War of 1812. It was, "We have met the enemy and he is ours." So this was reported to William Henry Harrison, who later became president, during the Battle of Lake Erie, right, in the War of 1812. It was actually in 1813. So after defeating the Royal Navy ships, this is what he reported, is that the enemy, we met the enemy and he is ours. So this was kind of a braggadocious statement, much like Julius Caesar saying "Vidi, vidi, vici," right? So we came, we saw, we conquered. And in that hubris, we assume that the most important things are out of our control. However, this is totally false. And what we always have to start with are the facts. What are the facts? What does the data say, regardless of how you feel about it, right? And what is an absolute fact is right now, chronic disease in the United States affects 40% of the population. You guys think about that number. That's almost 150 million people. And 6 out of 10 adults right now have at least one chronic illness. Guys, a chronic illness is something that you've had for more than 3 months, approaching a year's time. And it's usually managed by what? Drugs, right? So anyone who has a chronic illness typically is on a medication. For how long? Well, for life, right? 4 out of 10 people, 40% of those 6 out of 10 have 2 or more chronic diseases. So, and you guys, I'm going to get into this then in the next slide, but 75% plus of our healthcare dollars are dedicated to these chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, stroke, respiratory illness, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. Those are the top 6. So that is 80% of our healthcare dollars. And guess what? 80% of all of these chronic diseases are actually known and found to be, a lot of them, preventable. 80% of them, and 40% of cancers are preventable. So I love this slide. I took this from a talk that was done by actually Greg Glassman. It's a 7-minute video. I encourage all of you to Google it. Check it out. I can't remember who he was doing this for, but in his presentation, he showed that basically all sickness or illness comes from one of 5 ways: chronic, microbic, genetic, kinetic, or toxic. So one of these buckets, the reason you're sick, it usually almost 100% of the time falls on one of these buckets, right? So he has a divide between this chronic bucket, which is by far the biggest one, versus all the other ones, right? Microbic, genetic, kinetic, toxic. In this chronic bucket here, you can see underneath it says stroke, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. That willful divide. What this means is the willful divide is basically, these are your choices, right? And remember what we said, decisions. Your decisions lead to these chronic diseases. The ones on the right side, microbic, that's where you would find like SARS-CoV-2, for example. You can try to avoid it as much as you can, but most of us on this call have probably had some sort of viral sickness before. Some people have genetic diseases. I know myself, I've been in the emergency room many times in my life with kinetic problems, and then toxic, right? So snake bites, botulism, etc. Now, what has happened here is SARS-CoV-2 in the microbic bucket here has jumped over to the chronic disease bucket and has started to kill people at a rapid rate. And the reason being is because this chronic bucket here has made people very susceptible to other diseases and other problems, right? For example, if someone with diabetes and who is obese, if they fell, how much more likely are they to have more death and morbidity than somebody who is, doesn't have chronic disease? Of course, they're going to have many more problems, right? It's just, the thing is, like, gunshot wounds don't usually happen to people that get in car accidents, or maybe sometimes, but very rarely, right? These things in these buckets on the right, they don't make you more susceptible to other things in those buckets. But guess what? The chronic bucket does. Most people that have obesity they already have insulin resistance. People with insulin resistance are eventually going to become diabetic. They already have chronic cardiovascular disease, hypertension, etc. So I really like this because it really delineates between choices versus, you know, an environmental factor, right? So here's the real pandemic, you guys. It's chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is at the core of all of these chronic diseases. Now, there's two types of inflammation that you need to know about. One of them is good, one of them is not. Acute inflammation is actually a good thing. So acute inflammation is when you have an injury or you're dealing with an infection, and what happens is your white blood cells, they'll rush to the area of injury, right? And you get things swelling, you get things like redness, pain, etc. These are telltale signs of inflammation, and they're very critical for the healing and the recovery process. And that's why through a lot of my recommendations over the years, I actually don't recommend ice very often anymore, or heat. You know, it's important to support that inflammatory process when you're trying to heal an injury. However, the one underneath, chronic inflammation, this inflammation is no bueno. This type of inflammation occurs when unwanted factors like cigarette smoke, visceral fat, which is fat around your belly, excess catecholamines, which are stress hormones from toxic stress, fats and sugars, etc. And you can see I have rocks here. This is going to make sense in a minute. These are like rocks in your backpack. This type of inflammation is very preventable, right? Because you can make decisions that either result in chronic inflammation or that reduce chronic inflammation. And a lot of times these are reversible. So I'm going to give you guys an analogy here. So let's pretend we are all people that are floating around in a pool, okay? And you have a backpack on. You're floating around in this pool. This represents life, okay? You're swimming around, doing your thing. And what happens is when you make a choice, you're either putting a big ass rock in your backpack or you're putting, you know, a grain of sand in your backpack. Every decision you make has the potential to either increase or decrease your inflammation. And of course, when you put bigger rocks in your backpack, you start to sink. And when you sink, then you start struggling to catch your breath and you're gasping for air, right? And then what happens? You're barely above the surface and all of a sudden you get COVID-19 infection. Boom, you're dead. Okay? These are overloads of stress, okay? There's a word for this. It's called allostatic load, okay? Fancy term to describe the cumulative stressors in your life, right? So overload from stresses, three types of stresses, right? There's chemical, emotional or mental, and physical. There is no other types of stresses, okay? Chemical, physical, mental, emotional, okay? When you add rocks from those stressors, right, they create problems for you that result in chronic inflammation, okay? So the good choices or bad choices have potential to lower stress, remove rocks, or add stresses. So let's talk about big rocks, okay? This talk isn't going to be long. I'm going to keep it under an hour. You're going to take away 5 specific big rocks, okay, that you need to take out of your backpack, okay? A lot of you guys, you know, that already have chronic illness. You're even more. It's even more critical that you start working with these behaviors to really lower your allostatic load or take rocks out of your backpack, okay? So the first big rock we're going to talk about is toxic fats. There's a big discussion in the world of health and wellness. It's, you know, there seems to be people that are on like either like sugar is the biggest evil, okay, or fat is the biggest evil, okay? Sugar is fats. Well, guess what? It's both actually. Fats are not the problem, toxic fats are. So here are examples of toxic fats. Rancid oils from things like canola, safflower, peanut, sunflower, and vegetable oils. What do these have in common? Well, they all come from sources of vegetables or grains. So these oils are rich in what are called polyunsaturated fatty acids, okay, omega-6s. These omega-6s are very susceptible to damage and oxidation, okay? So you can think of oxidation like, let's say you left something out on the counter let's say you left food out on the counter. What happens is it starts to rot and stink and things like that. That's rancidification. That's oxidation, right? So what happens is these oils are very susceptible to oxidation, and they're found in things like packaged foods, restaurant foods, pizza, wings, trail mixes, things like that. So even things that you think are really healthy choices, right? So if you ever see an ingredient in your trail mix or your gas station snack that says hydrolyzed vegetable oil or any sort of vegetable fat, definitely do not eat it. This stuff causes more inflammation than, let's say, a candy bar. So here's some blood markers you want to be aware of that give us, that help us shed light on your chronic inflammation in your arteries, okay? Inflammation either in your arteries or pro-inflammatory fats that you have in your body. So CRP, the first one, this is C-reactive protein. This is a general inflammation test. I really like to do this test because it tells me if you have low levels of general inflammation in your body. And again, it can come from things like physical, mental, or emotional stressors. It doesn't have to come from toxic fats, but it can. Next one, LPPLA2. This is an enzymatic test that tells me if you have inflammation specific to your arteries, okay? This one I do many times with cholesterol profiles, and I'll go into a couple other really important cholesterol numbers because I'm not the biggest cholesterol guy, but there are some important things with a cholesterol profile that you need to know. MPO, this one here is specific to the lumen of your arteries. So what happens is if you actually have inflammation inside the lumen of the arteries, it makes you very susceptible to cardiovascular incidences like stroke and like atherosclerosis. Next, fatty acid profile. So you can actually measure the amount of omega-6s, omega-3s, trans fats, saturated fats in your bloodstream. This is a test that I do for everybody. Inevitably, most people that I test actually don't have a lot of trans fats, okay? Most people are fairly educated enough to know that they should not be eating trans fats and things like fast food. However, I do find people that are very deficient actually in omega-3s and very overloaded with omega-6s. This problem is one of the most telling issues of the American diet, is these toxic fats, right? So you're overloaded with omega-6s and you're under eating omega-3s. So where do you find omega-3s? Things like fish oil, okay, fatty fish, like salmon, sardines, tuna, herring, etc. So really, really important that you have a balanced fatty acid profile. Now, a couple of the cholesterol numbers that I really like to measure, one of them is called ApoB. Okay, most people are not familiar with this. This is something that is found on the LDLs, which are all your bad cholesterols. Not really, but ApoBs are proteins that are found on your LDL particles. And the higher the number, it's like a particle number test. The higher the number, it means the smaller and the more dense your LDLs are, which is no good because your LDLs are kind of like UPS trucks. They're shuttles. And if you have a UPS truck full of little pebbles, little marbles versus a truck full of beach balls, the one full of marbles are going to be more atherogenic or problematic for your arterial walls. Lastly, your LP little a. This one I do test. This one actually has a connection to genetics. So you are dealt either a good hand where your LP little a is naturally low, which is good because LP little a makes your particles sticky. Or you're dealt a hand where your particles tend to be more sticky. So if they are more sticky, it doesn't mean you're doomed to have heart disease. It just means that you have to be even that much more careful to make sure that your cholesterol is not going bananas. And that brings me to the last one, this ApoE profile. I'm huge on this. This is a genetic test that I do on everybody, especially my athletes actually, because this actually tells me if you're somebody that does really well with more of a carbohydrate-rich diet or more of a fat-rich diet, or are you sort of in the middle? Because what happens is if, for example, you're someone that does keto and you have an ApoE profile where you're a hyperabsorber of cholesterol, then what's going to happen is you're not going to perform well, you're going to be inflamed, and your blood biomarkers are going to be all over the place. So it's actually a really important, it's almost like a, what do you call it? Like a blood type test, okay? So action steps. You want to replace healthy fats, okay, from these rancid fats. You want to replace them with healthy fats from coconut, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, macadamia nuts, and seeds. This is the basis of what a good, healthy ketogenic diet should look like. Helpful supplements, you guys. So when I talk about supplements here, I am going to offer a discount code at the end, and an opportunity for you to be able to find these supplements so you're getting them from good quality and reputable sources, because especially things like fish oil, you absolutely want to spend good money on good fish oil. The last thing you want is rancid fish oil, okay, that was damaged by either sunlight or high temperatures, you know, through the processing or the shipping or the boxing or the bottling and then the delivery, okay, because these fats are they're polyunsaturated fats, just like omega-6s, so they can get damaged easily. So you want to make sure you're getting a good quality fish oil. Berberine is another really nice one. Berberine is actually good for blood sugar as well as good fatty acid profiles. It actually helps lower cholesterol. Nitric Balance. This is a supplement that I like to take from Apex. This helps with nitric oxide. It helps with healthy blood flow for things like sexual performance, actually, athletic performance, but just good overall vasculature. Resveratrol, most people have heard of this one by now. This is found in, yes, red wine, grapes preferably. So I prefer to get it from a supplement than red wine. Resveratrol has nice antioxidant properties, and of course, turmeric and curcumin, really nice anti-inflammatory herb. I like to take in supplement form. Okay. Oh, by the way, this book is excellent. Toxic Fat, written by Dr. Barry Sears. If you've never read it, it's a good read. It's not very complicated. It's not too sciencey. I think he wrote it in 2008. He's actually a local masshole. So good book. Number 2, big rocks here, glycemic load. So now we're going to talk about sugar. So here's what the science says. Blood sugar fluctuations are the problem. Okay. When you have fluctuations in blood sugar, what happens is your average is high. So what happens is you end up with chronic high blood sugar and chronic high insulin. When that happens, you have excess sugar in your bloodstream. Excess sugar in your bloodstream is toxic. Excuse me. So your body has no choice but to do one of 3 things with your blood sugar. Number 1, your body really would like to put your blood sugar back into your glycogen storage in your muscle. Okay, but guess what? If you're not exercising, your glycogen stores are probably full. Number 2, it really wants to put it back to your liver. Okay, but guess what? If you're not exercising, it's probably full. So where's the third place? Oh, yes, your waistline. Okay, it'll convert it to triglycerides, jam it into your adipose tissue. And guess what? It's going to go straight to your gut, likely. Okay, the worst place to have adiposity or fat is in the visceral region. That is what, that's one of the indicators of inflammation is visceral fat levels. I'll talk about this in a bit. So you guys, I want you to understand that it's the fluctuations in blood sugar, okay? And usually the ones that cause the highest fluctuations in blood sugar as far as carbohydrates are the most refined. So yes, it's not, carbohydrates are not the problem, it's the quality. So poor quality carbs with little fiber, because what happens is when they take the fiber out of the carbohydrate, then your body, it goes straight into your bloodstream. Okay, it takes very little digestion for that sugar to go straight into your blood. Fiber tends to slow that digestive process down, and it's really good for your gut. So what are things with very little fiber that have lots of sugar? Well, sweets, a lot of refined grain products like pastas, bagels, muffins, baked goods, and processed dairy as well. They cause massive insulin spikes. So here's the blood measurements you want to know. So you want to know your A1C. A1C, every diabetic knows this by, every 3 to 6 months they're measuring this. Absolutely. This is an average of what your blood sugar looks like over the course of 3 months. So hemoglobin A1C. A1C is a protein on your blood because your blood has a life cycle of about 60 to 90 days. And what happens is the more sugar that sticks to that protein, the higher your A1C becomes. So in other words, it tells us if your blood is becoming caramelized. So the more sugar that's around, remember sugar is toxic in your bloodstream. If it starts to caramelize your blood, your A1C will start to rise. You absolutely want to be under 5.7. Even if you're a type 2 diabetic. I'm going to talk about at the end my my doctor in Beverly, Dr. Kevin Green, he is a type 1 diabetic, and he has been doing keto for a couple of years, and he actually has gotten his A1C under, I think, right under 5.7 now, which is awesome. For a type 1 diabetic, that's almost unheard of. So he's going to talk a lot about that next week during his keto challenge talk. But blood work, A1C, and your fasting blood sugar. When you're fasted for more than 8 hours, your blood sugar should be double digit, okay, preferably in the 80s to low 90s. Okay, a lot of people with chronic stress, they end up with triple digit blood sugar, and that's no good. That creates that wreaks havoc, okay, causes chronic inflammation like crazy. So B vitamins, this is another good one for you to measure. I measure a lot of people's B vitamins, and a lot of people are deficient, especially in B12 and B9, which is folic acid. Especially if you have this genetic variant here, MTHFR. Okay, it looks like motherfucker. Okay, it stands for methotetrahydrofolate reductase. It is a gene that if you have variants on different copies of this gene, it can cause methylation issues with B vitamin absorption. And what happens is when you get B vitamin absorption issues, it can create problems with another inflammatory biomarker that I forgot to put here called homocysteine. Homocysteine is another heart disease risk factor. I measure this in everybody. I have this MTHFR variant. My homocysteine was 12 when I measured this a couple of years ago, which is a major issue. So something I take every day is methylated B vitamins. I take methylated B12 and B9. And my homocysteine, boom, it's right down to 4.0. So that's one you definitely want to measure. So here's some action steps, you guys. Read some of these books. These are really good books. I like Gary Taubes' books. He's got another one called Good Calories, Bad Calories. Don't read that one, though. That one's really hard to read. Why We Get Fat is a good one. Sugar Detox. And Mark Hyman's awesome. I just bought his new book. Can't wait to read it. He's an MD. So action steps: choose high quality unprocessed carbohydrates from things like tubers. What are those? Those are root vegetables. Fruits. Okay, what do tubers, fruits, and veggies have in common? They all have lots of fiber, soluble fiber. Okay, so things like sweet potatoes, yams, all different types of fruits, lots of root veggies, shoots, whole grains as well. Okay, as long as you're not gluten intolerant, of course, those cause problems. Here's some helpful supplements for those who have blood sugar struggles. Cinnamon is a really nice, it's a spice, really. And what it does is it actually helps you become more insulin sensitive or sugar sensitive. So your body becomes better at using the sugar. Berberine, again, remember I mentioned that one before with the fats. This one's good for blood sugar. Selenium, bitter melon extract, alpha lipoic acid, which is a shuttle for sugar and fats, and then chromium as well. So there's some nice supplements I can recommend that have a combination of some of these things. And again, we'll talk about that at the end. So moving on. So that's big rock number 2. What's big rock number 3? Stress. Okay. Nobody on this call has stress, right? Especially lately for some of you whose businesses are closed, like myself, like some of my friends who own CrossFit gyms, some of you who have lost your job, employment, lots of stress these days, right? Work, PTSD, relationships, poor breathing, travel, anxiety, depression, they all overexpose your nervous system with excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamate. And what happens is you get stuck in this, what's called sympathetic state. So you recognize that word sympathetic, okay? Sympathetic nervous system. This is your fight or flight nervous system. When you become chronically stressed, you get stuck in this sympathetic state. And this is part of our lizard brain that we were, in hunter-gatherer days, we were given this system to help either fight or flee, right? Either fight the saber-toothed tiger, run for your life. We still have this primitive nervous system for good reason, right? Because there are times where it's needed. However, when you get stuck in this sympathetic state, you get hyper secretion of things like cortisol, norepinephrine, noradrenaline. And what happens is things like this. Think about this. Your blood pressure spikes, your cholesterol rises, your blood rushes from your organ systems that were busy trying to digest and reproduce and help your immune system function, now it's rushed to all of your extremities to fight or flight. Your brain chemistry changes, right? You're no longer worried about balancing your checkbook. Now you're trying to think about all the shit that's going to happen that probably won't happen. Yeah, you can see how you get stuck in this state. It breaks you down. It's chronic stress, you guys, chronic inflammation. Something else that happens too is it makes you susceptible to leaky gut or gut issues. Gut issues scientifically have been found to be a lot of the root of things like autoimmune oriented issues. Leaky gut issues, what happens is your body starts to recognize proteins and things that otherwise wouldn't be a threat, that starts to recognize them as a threat. And a lot of times those proteins, they resemble other proteins in structures in our body, like your thyroid, like your gut tissue, like your brain, okay? Also, these inflammatory cytokines are called, you've probably heard of right now with this COVID-19 issues, the cytokine storm, right? Cytokines are inflammatory particles that are made by your T cells, your helper T cells. They help with the inflammation process. But what happens is when you're inflamed, your gut becomes inflamed because your body wants to get rid of shit, okay? If you have food poisoning, your body's right away going to make you throw up or have diarrhea. And what happens is when you have leaky gut, you also have a leaky blood-brain barrier. And this is a big problem because it starts to affect the way your nervous system operates. So your digestion and your brain health are intimately connected. And I've seen a lot of concussion cases in the last couple of years. And I can tell you that most cases of concussions inevitably have digestive secondary issues as well, either constipation or diarrhea issues. So if you need to heal your gut, you also need to heal your brain, and you need to heal your brain, you need to heal your gut, okay? And that includes healing. So you're healing the nervous system, right? So here's some things that I like to measure when I'm measuring the nervous system, okay? Number one, heart rate variability. So if you like to geek out on this stuff like me, like I wear something called a Whoop. The Whoop tells me my heart rate variability, my resting heart rate. It tells me my sleep quality. It tells me my basal metabolic rate, my strain, etc. I love it, love it, love it. You can get all kinds of different trackers that help track some of this stuff. But heart rate variability, what it does is it tells you how varied your heart rate becomes, okay? The higher your heart rate variability, the healthier you become. So your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of sympathetic, when your parasympathetic nervous system is functioning, releasing neurotransmitters, what happens is it creates variability in your heart rate. So the more relaxed and de-stressed you are, the higher your heart rate variability becomes. Also, what happens is your resting heart rate comes down as well. So you can track this via your sleep, okay? So sleep tracking, heart rate variability, resting heart rate, I'm a big proponent of tracking those. Also, hormonally, you can track your cortisol. You can track a lot of different hormones. Obviously, men and women, they're going to want to track hormones differently, and as well as thyroid. Really important to measure not just TSH, but we're talking T3, T4, reverse T3, as well as your antibodies, okay, your TPOs. Now, action steps. Here's what you can do to de-stress. Easier said than done. This is actually my weakest area. I am very proficient at the exercise and the eating. This has been my biggest challenge over the last couple of years that I've taken on. Meditation. Meditation is awesome. It helps create space. It gives you space either early in the morning, throughout the day, or before bed to just clear your brain, okay? Meditation works really well, especially if you combine it with breath work. I can't tell you enough about doing breath work and helping your body become really efficient at breathing, especially diaphragmatic breathing. A lot of people, as a practitioner, a chiropractor, one of the main things I see with most people, especially who sit and who have chronic stress, is they breathe like shit, okay? When you breathe like shit, you're stuck in sympathetic stress. It's a big rock in your backpack. If you become more connected with your diaphragm, belly breathing, being able to take big diaphragmatic breaths, it helps stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, push you in that rest and repair, reproduction, relaxation, okay? Where you want to digestion, that's where you want to be. So breath work, you can, these are some of my favorite books. Like Wim Hof is a big breathing guy. Meditation, I really like, so I'm big on military Navy SEAL guys, especially for mindset stuff. This is one of my mentors, Mark Divine. He teaches a lot about breathing drills, box breathing, warrior breathing, low level exercise. So we're talking just move your body. Okay. Don't get stuck sitting in a chair. I read this really cool study recently. It's a Japanese study. And they divided people up that sat, stood, or walked after a meal. And what they found out is that people that walked after a meal, their blood sugar was 18% lower just based on just walking for 30 minutes. Okay. This isn't even like exercising. This is just low level movement. Okay. So walking, moving around, super, super critical for your immune system, your hormones, your blood sugar. Let's look at some other stuff here. Sleeping 7+ hours. We don't even have time to get into sleep. This is a really good book, Lights Out, Sleep, Sugar, and Survival. Just on the importance of sleep, resetting your hormones. We talked about this last week with the immune system. It's the only way your nervous system has time to repair your immune system, as well as repair all your neurotransmitters, your hormones, create memories, etc. So anybody who tells you they don't need at least 7 hours of sleep is lying. Okay. Therapies like cold exposure, infrared saunas are awesome. Some people, especially when we're talking about PTSD, extreme depression and anxiety cases, therapy might be warranted, could do wonders. And of course, get adjusted. As a chiropractor, restoring healthy biomechanics and movement, I can't stress enough how important that is. We live in unnatural times, and we now require unnatural solutions, okay, for our deficiencies. Just like we have dentists that help us with our oral health, we have chiropractors that help us with our spinal health. You need it to have a healthy, functioning, and moving spine and nervous system. If you participate in this society of sitting, traveling, sitting in a car, whatever. Another big thing is reducing your stimulants. I don't abide by that one well. I really love coffee, but if you're going to drink coffee, do not drink coffee past noon. Caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours. So it'll fuck up your sleep if you drink coffee past noon. I promise, even if you think you can sleep after drinking coffee, it still messes up your deep sleep. Here's some important supplements. Mag-glycinate. This is just magnesium. It's a form of magnesium that really helps with winding down your nervous system. I recommend taking this at night. Collagen protein, really helpful for joint health. I take this every day. I throw it in my oatmeal in the morning. Vitamin D, really critical for everything. Okay, I can pretty much put vitamin D in every category. This is a really important biomarker that I measure in my practice as well. And eating a minimum of 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. I can't tell you how important that is. I think a lot of people do not eat enough protein. They're eating way too much, either fat or carbs. Making sure you're getting satisfactory protein to make sure you're supporting your skeletal muscle. Okay, your muscle requires amino acids for repair. You get that from protein. That's what you need. Okay, let's move on from stress. Let's get into the fourth big rock, which is high body fat. What does high body fat mean? To me, high body fat is any male over 20% body fat, any female over 30% body fat. Okay, you want to live between 10 to 20% if you're a guy, 20 to 30% if you're a woman. Now, it's different for athletes, but you get the gist of it, right? You're over 30% body fat, that means you're obese. Okay, the vast majority of America is over fat. Okay, meaning their body fat percentage is over 30%, 28, 30% or more. So I think it was only 20% of Americans only in the United States strength train. I don't know, where we sort of lost the importance of making sure that we're doing resistance and strength training, especially for women. I think a lot of guys, they recognize the importance, but women absolutely need to strength train. This just means resistance work. Everybody, if you if you're a human being, you must strength train. One of the most important things you can do is carry muscle on your frame. It's literally the most protective thing you could possibly have. If there was one thing I could tell you is strength train. Strength train. There are so many people that do not do it. Do it, okay? Strength training reduces your blood sugar, increases your insulin sensitivity, protects you from injury. It literally makes you hard to kill, okay? There's nothing more important than this, especially if you sit. And guess what? The average American sits for 10 hours a day. So here's your action step. You're going to commit to resistance training and high intensity interval training at least 2 to 3 days a week. Okay. If you've never done this before, hire a coach. I know tons of fantastic coaches. Please message me. I'm more than happy to refer you to a coach. Move your body every day, especially after eating. I quoted that study before. Postprandial walking has been found to reduce body fat, reduce blood sugar, improve digestion across the board. Okay. Walk after you eat. Cardio is actually best done in the morning before breakfast. So I just want you to get off the chronic cardio train. I know a lot of people, and I have patients that they only do cardiovascular fitness. Yes, cardiovascular fitness is important. If you are interested in losing body fat, then do it first thing in the morning before you eat a big breakfast. Okay. A little bit of fasted cardio in the morning. Obviously get adjusted. Put this in there again. And supplements. There are no supplements that can replace exercise. Sorry. Okay. That's that if exercise could be sold in a pill, okay, the pharmaceutical company that could find replacing the benefits of exercise and put it in a pill, they're going to profit more than the company that is going to invent the vaccine for COVID-19. Let me just say that. Last rock, big rock number 5 is bad habits. Okay, these are no-brainers, you guys. So science says your ability to defend against infections is reduced when you don't drink alcohol or smoke. Well, I thought alcohol was good for me. No, it's not. Okay. If you drink once a day, well, have one. Okay. Make sure it's not full of sugar. If you can, try to minimize the alcohol to only a couple of days a week. Okay. I happen to enjoy a whiskey on occasion myself, or a cider. I'm no saint. I do love a good beverage. Okay. But it's not healthy. I know when I'm drinking alcohol, I know that I'm not doing something good for my health. Okay. So don't let anybody fool you like a cigar a day is healthy, or a glass of wine or a shot of alcohol a day is healthy. It's not. Okay. I guarantee you someone that doesn't drink versus someone that does drink does better. Negatively impacts your immune system, kills the healthy microbes in your gut, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So here's the action steps. Good habits like reducing your alcohol, quit smoking, get some natural sunlight, get outside, get outdoors. Here's some other things that you can play with. Now, I'm saying this with, okay, that letting you know that do not decide to just go gluten-free, start fasting and doing weird stuff if you didn't get the other big rocks handled first, okay? These are like sprinkles on top. Try doing gluten-free, especially if you know you have gut agitation when you eat gluten. You can try fasting. There's some good studies that show that it does help reduce inflammation. Overall, if you're just interested in losing weight, yeah, of course, fasting works because it shortens your window when you can shove food into your pie hole. And then keto done properly. Keto done properly is very effective. And again, I'm going to talk about that at the end, about Dr. Kevin's challenge that's coming up. Here's some other supplements I didn't mention yet too. CBD oil. I do have a company that I work with. CBD oil is also something you want to be very careful that you get from a good reputable source. CBD oil is extracted differently depending on the company you get it from and depending on where the hemp comes from. You want to make sure the hemp is organic, pesticide, herbicide free. You want to make sure that it's carbon dioxide extracted. You want to make sure that the concentration is high as well. So you're usually going to pay some pretty good money for this, but I am, like I said, I work with a company that I trust the source and I take myself, and I'm going to offer some discount codes at the end. Probiotics, I haven't mentioned those yet. Really good for healthy gut biome, making sure that you're gut tissue is healthy, so you can absorb nutrition, keep your inflammation low. And the last one is glutathione. I take this every day, especially during the winter months. The reason being is it's a really nice, it's your body's master antioxidant, actually. A lot of times you're not actually taking the literal glutathione, you're taking precursors like N-acetylcysteine. So it helps with the conversion and the creation of glutathione because your body makes it naturally. A lot of times in hospitals, they actually give this for things like acetaminophen toxicity because this helps clean up and clear your liver, okay? So really good for liver health. This book, if you have not seen it, I really like Ben Greenfield. I thought he was a bit of a nut job at first, but he's actually a super smart guy. I really love his new book. It's kind of expensive, but super worth it. A lot of really cool stuff in there, health hacks, all the way from longevity to improving your sex life to improving your athletic performance, improving your immune system, etc. Really great book. Okay, so now for my last part here. A lot of you are probably wondering, well, how do I get all that testing done? How do I know if I have chronic inflammation? What do I do? Well, I'm offering you an option. How do you know where you stand with your health? Well, I'm a huge proponent of measuring physiology. In other words, deciding how healthy you are based on factual data, not on how you feel, okay? Because how many people do you know that have felt fine and that have been massively sick the next day, have had a heart attack, cancer, etc.? It's not a good way to decide how healthy you are. You want to know the facts. I have a phenomenal amplified wellness score that I do in my office that helps you measure the 4 categories of your health. One of them is functional movement, so your strength, your flexibility, your neurospinal health. This would be things like your range of motion, your neurological health, your general health, which would be things like your body fat percentage, your blood pressure, your waist to hip ratio, etc. And lastly would be your functional blood chemistry. So all of those blood biomarkers that I talked about during this talk, but I also do a ton more. And what I do is I plug all of these data points into something called a wellness score. And what it does is it pops out in an actual report card. So it actually gives you, it's cut off at the bottom, but it actually gives you a letter grade like grade school. This is actually way, way more important than, say, a general physical that you get at your GP's practice. It gives us specific things to work on, right? If you need to work on your functional movement or your general health or some things with your blood chemistry, we can give you specific recommendations to actually attack those deficiencies and help bring them up. So you can see this is a before and after study here. You can see some of the biomarkers on the left side here, right? Core strength, flexibility, homocysteine, we talked about, insulin, total cholesterol, blah, 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 okay? A lot of really cool stuff. We can plug in, I think, upwards of 75 biomarkers into your wellness score. It's usually a $350 exam, but these days people more than ever need to know how healthy they are. They need to, this is the most important thing, is your health. I hope a lot of you are taking that away from this pandemic, is that the most important thing you have is your health, the health of yourself and your family, right? It's a $350 exam. I'm doing it for $99. Okay. Well, once we open up the office again, likely the end of April, beginning of May, fingers crossed, we're going to be doing these tests for $99. Okay. Write this number down, 978-655-4979. That's my office number. My beautiful assistant, Evelyn, would be more than happy to help you schedule that. We do the phlebotomy draws at my office. We do the whole first exam in my office, and you will do the report personally with me. Okay. So I hope you guys like the talk today. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. Okay. There's the North Andover and Beverly Wellness Centers there. So make sure you like, follow, and click see first on your mobile device. And then make sure you join us next week. I'll go back to that one. Next week, Dr. Kevin, who's my doctor in Beverly, he's going to be doing a webinar, same time, 6:30 on Thursday, about our Keto Challenge launch that we're going to do in May. So he's going to be teaching all about his story with keto. He's going to be teaching all about the challenge and the benefits of keto. And that's going to be, again, next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Here's the link on the bottom. It's a link tree, I guess, linktr.ee/keto KMGDC131. So it stands for Kevin, whatever Kevin's middle name is. Oh no, yeah, Green DC, Doctor of Chiropractic. Was it Marvin? Meredith. Okay. So Linktree/KMGDC131 to make sure you sign up. It's also, we're going to have promotion all this next week on our Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube pages. Now, my last slide, I'll go back to the one before here. So I promised some supplement discounts. So as I mentioned before, it's very important that you're getting your supplements from good quality sources, especially the oil-based supplements. I work with Metagenics, which is the supplements I take myself every day. Apex is another supplement company I work with that I take every day. And the CBD oil company I work with is called Inside Out Solutions. Those are tabs on my website that you can actually visit and purchase. I will, however, give anybody who either texts or emails me a discount code and instructions on what supplements to get and how to get the discount code. So I prefer an email actually, because then I can just email you the PDF sheet with the links and the discount code. So it's Dr. Ryan at ionatewellnesscenter.com. You can shoot me a text. This is basically like a HIPAA compliant text, 978-350-5654. Feel free to visit our website. And yeah, I'll open it up for questions here, you guys. If anybody has any questions, I think I saw somebody did Q&A here. Let's see. Chat. There we go. Audio soft. Uh-oh, I hope you cannot hear me. Uh-oh. I hope I was audible to most of you. Okay, no questions here, just some comments that people got a lot out of that. Anybody have any questions before we shut it down? Feel free to throw it in the chat. If anybody has any questions either about supplements, what's the difference between methylated and non-methylated B vitamins? Great question. The difference is the methylated B vitamins, like Methyl-Care, for example, from Metagenics, already has a methyl group attached to the B vitamins. So what methyl means is it's just carbon and hydrogen. So what happens through the processing of the supplement, they already pre-attach hydrogen and carbon in a methyl group, CH3, to the vitamin to make it easily absorbable. So if you have the MTHFR variant and you have problems absorbing B vitamins, this will bypass that issue and help you absorb those vitamins. So hopefully that helps you. So I would encourage you to make sure you get your MTHFR variants tested. The brand is Metagenics. Okay, and the supplement is called Methyl-Care. This is something that I take every day. Have I heard of AIG? No, I have not heard of AIG. Or IAG? No, I have not heard of IAG. Do I advise vegans? Great question. Let me give you my 2 cents about the vegan diet. Is the vegan diet an optimal diet for the human species? Absolutely not. I do not advise it for anybody. However, there are some people that want to practice veganism. Maybe it's something they feel very strongly about. They just don't like meat. They have such severe allergies to things, whatever. So there are ways to do a vegan diet in the healthiest way possible. It is very hard, but you can do it. So it's very, very challenging. So I have advised. I'm going to go ahead and just say that I'm not the best person to advise someone on a vegan diet, though. I can be the best person to help convince them to stop eating vegan, maybe, but it's not my expertise. I have practitioners that I refer to for complicated cases. I consider vegan cases complicated. And I have done blood work on a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, some vegan cases before. And I can tell you that it's a very deficient diet, especially when it comes to B vitamins, iron. It causes lots of thyroid problems, hormonal issues, and it can be actually very hard on things like your liver. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Nobody else? All right, guys, thank you so much for being on. Please feel free to email me, message me if you have questions, if you're interested in any of the discount codes. And make sure that you guys look for the registration for the keto webinar next week. So good night, you guys. Stay healthy, stay safe. See you guys soon.